Welcome to Digication Scholars Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Yan. In this episode, you will hear part one of my conversation with Marc Thompson, Assistant Director for Teaching and Learning Experiences at the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. He is also the Program Director for the Information Accessibility, Design, and Policy Program. More links and information about today's conversation can be found on Digication's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Full episodes of Digication Scholars Conversations can be found on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Welcome to Digication Scholars Conversations. I'm your host, Jeff Yan. My guest today is Marc Thompson. Marc is the Assistant Director for Teaching and Learning Experiences at the Center of Innovation in Teaching and Learning at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. He is also the Program Director for the Information Accessibility, Design, and Policy Program. Welcome, Marc.
Hi, Jeff. How's it going?
Good. I am so happy that you can join us today. I think you and I have worked together for a few years at this point, and it's
Yes.
I must say that it's a rather unusual relationship because we at Digication, we officially are a vendor of your institution, but we also have been very lucky to become a collaborator with you, especially your unit, and we'll, I'm sure, talk a lot more about that, especially in terms of accessibility and the work that we did together. But before we go there, I just want the listeners to hear a little bit about you. You've taught for a long time, and I read that it's over 30 years at this point, and have, of course, done a lot of teaching also online, and you have been an advocate for accessibility and equal access, and I think most recently, you've got some new work going on as well. So I'm going to let you talk about that. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and your role at UIUC?
Sure. Well, as you indicated, I wear multiple hats here, and have worn multiple hats over the past few years. Recently, within the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning, I was leading the instructional design team, but also playing a role in accessibility on campus. Since 2014, when the IADP program was established, I worked as a designer for that program and as an instructor. Interestingly
IADP,
enough,
that's the Information Accessibility, Design, and Policy Program.
that's correct, yes. And it's interesting as I think back on that, it was about that exact same time that the International Association of Accessibility Professionals was getting off the ground, which is another confusing acronym for you, IAAP and IADP, right? In addition to that, an organization that I have been really honored to work with, Teach Access, was just getting off the ground that same year. So a lot of things were converging back then.
Remind me later that we'll talk about Teach Access, because I've come across them as well, and it's what a wonderful organization. So can you tell us just a little bit of, what makes you so interested in accessibility? Ever since I've known you, by the way, I know that you've had so much experience in so many things, and instructional design itself is probably a whole other area that we can talk about. But accessibility has been, for me at least, is your identity. I always known you as the accessibility guru here.
Well, I think with anybody, if you were to ask anybody who's working in the area of accessibility, you would find that the starting point is always empathy. So having some empathy. In my case, I met up with a blind individual at a technology meeting on our campus, and wasn't even thinking about accessibility very deeply, but just engaged in some conversation with him. We got started talking. The next thing I know, he and I and Norm Coombs were sketching out a Sloan C workshop, a 3-day Sloan C workshop on accessibility, which then morphed into a class for the Illinois Online Network. And so gradually things began to build as we began to collaborate more and more. So it's really interesting that in terms of the field of accessibility, that it's still, it's in the process of being formalized, but still we're far from it. I think a lot of it is mentorship and apprenticeship. I'm thinking of Tanya Heap, who's now the director of accessibility at University of North Texas, who came to my office and said, look, I don't know anything about accessibility, but my grandmother is blind, and I would really like to learn more about accessibility. And we started there. But again, empathy is really the foundation. And for that reason, we start off the first course in the Information Accessibility Design and Policy program with understanding different types of disabilities and functional challenges that individuals face, particularly with information technology.
That's really well said. I think that there are a lot of people that feel the same way, and I think that more people than I actually struggle to find people who don't have any connections with people that have some sort of special need. I think my one of the things that I remember growing up as a teenager, I was in England, and my family had a family member who had a stroke for half her body, and she's also mostly deaf, and so the stroke caused her to have to be on a wheelchair, and at that point in England, is in the 90s, in the early 90s, restaurants and public places are not accessible at all. And in fact, if we are really, really diligent, we might call and ask before, but sometimes they don't give you the correct information. And so anywhere we ever want to go anywhere, there's really only couple of choices. Because these are places that we know are mostly they're like chain restaurants that we know for sure that they're accessible, and those are the only places we could go. And I still remember that, and being sort of thinking about, that's kind of where I sort of have a personal experience with my first experience with it was, society doesn't, if the society doesn't pay attention to it, it doesn't naturally come with the empathy if we don't pay some extra attention to it, and if the empathy doesn't exist, then folks that have any kind of special needs or disabilities, you just have a much harder time, and it doesn't have to be like that, right? And speaking of this kind of history, I also want to acknowledge that your institution, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, has been a champion of accessibility for many, many decades. And this is way before the kind of digital, app-based accessibility that we often talk about today. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we're going back to after the Second World War, really, and the veterans, disabled veterans, and then looking in through the civil rights period. But I think in particular, at our institution, we're talking about Timothy Nugent, who was a leader in the area of universal design and in athletics, and, architecture on our campus, He led the way for decades here and at other institutions as well through his efforts. I would mention as an extension of that, you mentioned the digital era, and I would tip my hat to John Gunderson as being in some ways the digital successor to Timothy Nugent. John has just recently retired, but there were a lot of people who, under his mentorship, were able to get involved more deeply in things that were going on with accessibility in the ARIA, the Accessible Rich Internet Applications teams, or working in groups connected with W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, to establish rule sets and associated with accessibility. So John has just been a mentor to us all, really, and a pioneer in the area of digital accessibility. So yes, and I would add now that we're at I think a very interesting nexus with teaching and learning, specifically universal design for learning, which is not the same as universal design, though there are connections, and it's not the same as accessible design. But I think when we're talking about universal design for learning, our unit is in the process. We just finished interviewing finalists for a UDL specialist position here at the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning. And so we're building a universal design for learning team here within CITL that will reach out to our faculty on campus and bring our sister campuses in Chicago and Springfield together to share resources. But I do think our faculty are really at a tipping point where they're all pretty much familiar with the conceptual framework of UDL, but now they're really poised to apply it. And that's why I think this team, the timing for this team is really appropriate. And so we're really excited about getting started. We're reaching out to different colleges on our campus now, just getting started doing that. We're in the process at the very early stages of developing a UDL certificate program within CITL for faculty. I can mention also that I think with recent changes to the tenure and promotion process, the diversity, equity, and inclusion statement that is part of that is also another factor. I think people are very interested now in inclusion, not just as part of the tenure and promotion process, but even more generally. And that's without saying anything about tech companies. So I think that's an interesting story in and of itself. Digication being part of that, of course.
We can. I want to unpack so much of all of this, but I must say that one of the most amazing collaborations that we've had at Digication of our 20 plus year history is with you. This collaboration goes a lot beyond what we would typically do with most schools. And why don't we talk a little bit about that, because it's unusual, but it's in such a beneficial way, certainly for us, and I hope for you as well. And a few years ago, I will start by saying, our colleague Kate Labor, who has just retired and was previously a Digication scholar as well. So we'll put a link to her episode in the show notes. People want to hear about her insights. And Kate has brought us together, I think. She said, look, there's a lot of accessibility resources and capacity at this university. And I had said that I would love to meet them. I would love to work with them. And she just brought us together, and we formed a a partnership where we work together, and your team have graciously been doing auditing and testing of our applications and providing feedback. And I think that we've been collaborating like that for several years.
Yes, that's right. And, I think Digication is sort of a poster child for the way we would really like to work with vendors in the education sector. We're currently working with vendors in, Turnitin is a vendor that we're working with now. We're looking at a replacement for our course evaluation system. So we're evaluating that platform. The list goes on. Any of the LTIs, the Learning Tools Interoperable software that runs with our campus's Canvas learning management system needs to be vetted. So we have a campus policy and accessibility policy before it can be really used. We do have an exception process whereby, as we did with Digication, we look at some of the points of concern, some of the accessibility challenges, and we try to work with the vendor to establish solutions to those issues and a timeline for that. In the interim, we work out something called an alternate access plan, and that's often done in conversation with the vendor. So there may be, I'll give you a very easy example of this. And InStructure is well aware of the accessibility problems with its new quiz tool. The date for sunsetting the classic quiz tool has been moved back and back and back, and I think finally they've just lifted it now. But in looking at both the new quiz tool and the classic quiz tool, the feature comparison was, the classic tool was more robust in terms of the features it offered, and really mapped to almost all the features of the new quiz. So in that case, in that instance, the alternate access plan was to simply use the classic quiz tool instead of the new quiz tool. But sometimes the alternate access plans are a little bit more involved. But to your point, this business of engaging with and working with what we call vendors, we use that term to refer to companies who provide educational platforms like Digication. It's always been that collaboration. And my mentor, Hadi Rangan, I'll mention him by name, is still a huge, that's basically all he does at the University of Washington is collaborate with vendors like Microsoft. And he's done a lot of work there with the ribbon, making the ribbon accessible. And he's worked with just a number of companies. It's ongoing. So we enjoy doing this, but particularly if the vendor is proactive about working on these things. And that's one area I think where Digication has really shined in several ways, not only attention to the issues, but sending one of your quality assurance, your senior quality assurance engineer, Ratna Yelgo, to the IADP program for training. And that's, for me, that is really where the rubber hits the road, when we can take someone, train them, send them back to that company and have that culture of accessibility, work its way out in the product. Right? Even recent surveys have shown that 60% or more of the companies are saying it's very difficult to find people with accessibility skills even today. So I think there's very much a skills gap between higher ed and industry. And in some ways, the collaboration is one way of bridging that gap, helping to bridge that gap. But I think there's no substitute for formal training in this area. And we were very, very glad to have the opportunity to have Ratna go through the program.
Yeah, it's that's just an amazing extension to our collaboration. When we found out and learned more about the IADP program, we thought, wow, this resource is right here. How did we not know about this? And once we learned about it, we had brought it to our engineers, who already have been very happy to work with you, and your team, and had said, oh, and then, this is available. And we had said that Digication will pay for anyone, here to attend this program. And then our team just, got super excited. And Ratna was the first one to go through, and she loved it. I think that you had, you probably remember that her parents came from India to come in and get the certificate, with her. And something you were talking about, how that collaboration furthers the field, right? Because there's a skill gap. You're absolutely right. Ever since Ratna had finished that program, her sister is now doing accessibility, and she's teaching everyone that she knows about accessibility. And so, it's a wonderful thing, because I think you're absolutely 100% correct that it's hard to find people who are really skilled in this. And then the problem also is that even when you go out to hire, you don't, if you don't have the knowledge, it's also hard for you to assess how skilled they actually are. They could, talk a lot about a VPAT and and certain aspect of CSS, etc. In coding, a web page, but that is by no means knowing, a lot about accessibility. Actually, like you said, one of the things that I will plug IADP as what an amazing program is, that on one hand, there's a lot of technical pieces in it, right? So Ratna was able to bring back so much knowledge and know-hows and, tricks and ways to solve certain problems, right? But it's not about those definitive way of solving problems. It's about how you change your entire mindset in designing something, right? And this is where I find that if you go in and take a course or read a book about, here are the, or even read the specification in W3C. Not that it's bad. It's just that they are responsible for telling you, here are the different ways that the browser is going to interact with a screen reader, for example. But they don't go into the depth of how to develop empathy, right? Or how do you translate that empathy into something, interactions that you can use to work with actual real users.
That's right. One of the exercises we do in the program that I think especially speaks to what you're saying is functional accessibility testing. And in order to do that, you need the students, the learners, and hopefully the designers for the platforms go through each and every step of what users would be doing to accomplish specific tasks. And then how easy is it for users to do that? How many steps does it take them to navigate from point A to this part of the platform? And what are the roadblocks along the way? So that kind of thing, I'll give you an example, and this is years ago, and I'm not going to mention specific names, but a web conferencing system that was technically accessible. You could navigate by keyboard alone, using the tab key, for example, or shift tab to go in reverse. But the functional accessibility of it was overlooked. In a web conferencing situation where you need to be very spontaneous and maybe move from audio to text chat to maybe screen sharing. How many tabs does it take you to get from one of those modules or modes in that platform to another? And in this case, it was something crazy like 16 tabs to get from, the regular whiteboard area to the text chat area. So it, technically accessible, but functionally accessible, no. So it's very important to keep that in mind. And accessible design really is more about specific user needs. So I'm thinking way back historically to something like the Blackboard's accessible gradebook, for instance, which was really very targeting blind users. But then again, in terms of all other users, they may not be impacted by that accessible design. Accessible rich internet applications really speaks largely to screen readers. So that's very specific. Universal design itself is more encompassing, perhaps maybe a more holistic way of looking at design that includes that functional element, which is so important.
And it seems like that screen readers is one of those areas that have probably had been given the most amount of attention in terms of in the digital part of the accessibility. Now there are a lot of other invisible disabilities that it certainly feels to me that we're just scratching the surface on. Right. I for example, I again have I think having personal experiences really makes you think a little bit differently. I have more than one children who have ADHD and other types of learning disabilities, and for them, just the idea of for me the idea of looking at something and then typing in something is different from them looking at something and then having thought about 5 other things and then come back and try to remember where they were. So it's not like they're not cognitively incapable of doing so, but the amount of distractions that happens when they are using an app or using a tool is dramatically different. And so for them, if something wasn't labeled, for example, when you come back, even from a 10-second distraction somewhere else, they already got lost. And I find, these types of behaviors are still just in fairly early phases of, trying to figure out how we deal with all of them.
That's very true. And this is also an area where I think universal design for learning comes into play, but certainly with the complexity of the interface, right? Whatever platform we're talking about, right? And, efforts toward the minimal, but without sacrificing the functionality of that. I think very important to think about that aspect of interface design. From a UDL perspective, and even from an instructional design perspective, we talk about cognitive load, right? A great example of this would be the syllabus, right? Which has just over the years snowballed and snowballed. It's become a legal document. I've seen some syllabuses as long as 18 pages long. And, this is in the context of universal design for learning, this is a threat. For some students. Yes. It's the threat it poses is the cognitive load of trying to take all of that in without even saying anything about how it might be structured. So, one of the things that we would be doing with faculty, for example, would be maybe helping them to think about ways that they could modularize their syllabus. there are certain, and think about the functionality of it too, because the schedule in a course syllabus is something a student is going to return to time and time again. What am I doing this week? So modularize that component of it so that they have quick, direct access to it. Or policies, right, which have grown increasingly over the years. Maybe modularize that portion of it, but make it easy to get to these different areas. So maybe a landing page where they can easily access those other modules that we were talking about. Another thing that we're starting to think about a lot in the context of universal design for learning is the visual design, right, and how important that is. And just the different types of learners, neurodiversity. Again, going back to that idea of the syllabus, what would it be like for students to have, for instance, a visual diagram of the course, right? What would that look like visually? Those kinds of tools, even the iconography that you use in a course to help convey the continuities or different sections, recognition, all of that is very important. We know that learners learn more when they are exposed to multiple modes of representation, right? So not only reading about something, but seeing it in action, or even after that, applying it immediately, practicing it. That's a pattern that I often follow where I can in some of my courses, is to write about it, show it, and do it. So with all of those modes of interacting with the content, I think the learning is increased.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, you had talked about the various collaborations, with different, universities and, people that have gotten to different, places from your institution. We shouldn't forget that we also got to work with Katie Lester from University of Alaska in Anchorage, who is a student. She actually just graduated. And she
nice.
Is also a Digication scholar. We just had her on. Actually, her episode just aired, a couple of weeks ago, and she also talks very fondly about the IADP program, something that she still wants to do. But what we got to be able to do, much like your experience when you said that when you first, were working with a colleague who is blind, and you just started talking about how this was going to work. And I think that Katie is another, one of, just what a great example. She was studying social work, and is attending the University of Alaska, Anchorage, and she's blind. And as part of her coursework, she's building a portfolio in Digication. And I think she actually was one that, along with your help and your team's help, really hammer home the difference between functional usability and just being VPAT compliant. When we were able to have her show us exactly what steps she takes to go and upload a file, what steps she takes to add a new module or make a change to the color of something, etc. It really, it provided us with so many insights, and there were so many low-hanging fruits, to be honest, that we were feeling so dumb for not having done certain things. Because it doesn't even take longer. We just didn't know. This concludes part 1 of our conversation. To hear part 2, be sure to subscribe to Digication Scholars Conversations on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Digication Scholars Conversations is brought to you by Digication, a technology platform powering the most innovative e-portfolio programs in K-12 and higher education. Our website can be found at digication.com. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thanks for tuning in.